This podcast is sponsored by Rask Invest, my guide to money and investing on the ASX and globally. To learn more about Rask Invest, follow the link in your podcast player.
Welcome to the Australian Finance Podcast, a podcast for people who want to learn more about their personal finances and get the most from their money. This series is hosted by Kate Campbell from How to Money and Owen Raskovich from Rask Finance.
The Australian Finance Podcast is provided for educational purposes only. The information is general in nature and does not take into account your needs, goals, or objectives. What that means is the information does not apply to you specifically, so consider getting the advice of a licensed and trusted professional before acting on the information. Welcome back, Kate, to the Australian Finance Podcast.
Thanks, Owen.
What are we talking about?
Well, Owen wanted to discuss cars, mortgages and education. Three slightly unrelated topics, but...
They're all related because they're the three biggest things that most people, the three biggest expenses most people have in their lives. So,
yeah.
Yep. I once heard a podcast. It's like if you can nail these three things and the rest of it sorts itself out.
Yeah.
And it's totally true. And we're going to talk about how you can make some very simple changes, maybe to like your behavior or your thinking.
Mm.
And these things are just crushed. You just nail these things.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the thing. If you can control the biggest costs, then the smaller ones like having your latte don't really matter as much.
yeah, that's it. And so you could count up the number of lattes you could save and what that would do for your super fund, or you could just try and sort out like your education or for your kids' education and then think about that.
Mm.
And that might save you a lot more money. Okay, so I was thinking we could just bucket it into three different things.
Yep.
First one being schools and education. And I was frantically digging up some research on this. But I figured it makes sense to start with schools and education as kind of we'll start at the preschool, primary, high school, and we can maybe just talk a little bit about uni. But I guess why don't we just jump off with preschool? And this is probably preschool / the early stages of primary school. But if you ever heard the saying, show me the boy at 7 and I'll give you the man. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I have. Yep.
Yeah. Excuse the pronouns. It could be the girl at 7 and I'll show you the woman. Doesn't really matter. But the idea is that, they've made a TV series about this, 7 Up.
No, I haven't heard of that.
So it's like, I think it's UK film series, and it follows these young people and it shows them many years later and where they're at. And the point here is that as young people, as children, you're kind of just this sponge and you just soak up all of this information from the world around you. And a lot of your development is done during that time, right? Like I'm not a biologist, I'm not a psychologist, like I don't have all the facts and figures for you off the top of my head, but it's pretty well known and there's a lot of study that backs this up. I went in search of this study and trying to find preschool research that supports putting kids through education, whether it's just childcare or whether it's extracurricular activities, so things done in the home, or whether you just send your kids to do something. And one of the quotes I have here, and this is a pretty cool one, is that well-designed early childhood interventions, or just think a study, has been found to generate a return to society ranging from $1.80 to $17.07 for each dollar spent on the program. So you kind of it's pretty specific.
Yeah.
And it says to society, right? But the thing is here, so imagine, you have people, you take your kids to early, childcare, that other people come into your house and teach your kids, whatever. The point is here, the study was based on something to show that, if you end up in prison by the age 16, let's just say, that's going to lose you a lot of money. And then if, in
lose
society,
the government.
Yeah, a lot of money. But then if you go on to, be very successful in your career and blah, 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 pay taxes, then that's a benefit for society.
Yeah.
But what it shows is that if you're investing in these programs, as you would expect, they are significant in what they return to you and to society more broadly. And I just wanted to bring this up because it's kind of like this idea that when we invest from an early age, it has such a profound impact later on in life. Same with children. You invest some money now or effort and time, and it pays dividends many, many times over years down the track.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think investing, it's quite interesting, the sort of switching the case around and thinking about investing in humans and their potential.
And the thing is, we talk about programs here, you don't have to invest money and send them to fancy schools well, we'll get to that in a minute, but you don't have to do that from a young age. So, as most parents would know, I'm not a parent, just full disclosure, but as most parents would know, reading to your child before they go to bed is a very important thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got another one here. Research shows that children who attend childcare for 3 years or more perform much better on a year 4 literacy and numeracy test. Jesus has that.
I didn't attend childcare, did you?
I probably didn't. Well, 18 months of preschool has a greater impact on literacy and numeracy levels at age 11 than all 6 years of primary school.
Mm.
And this was, of course, this study was sponsored by a childcare centre provider. But that's...
As most good studies are, they're sponsored by the same industry.
Yeah, but the point stands. So it's saying, you invest 3 years in a child, could be equivalent, or 18 months of preschool could be equivalent to all of primary school in terms of development for numbers and letters. Numeracy and literacy. Yeah, see what I did there?
You got it right.
But so that's just I guess a concrete example of how these things benefit.
Yeah.
Right. So when we're talking about this from a bigger, broader perspective, maybe that investment that you make early on is super, super important. You don't realize straight away. And so if that's a big cost for you, if you're going through that stage of your life as a parent, look at childcare and look at like rebates and subsidies. I think you can get all of it on the MyGov website, and it links to ATO, and it links all around DHS, all those types of websites where you can find more information. Kate, where'd you go to primary school? Was it private or was it?
It was public for part and private for the other part.
Oh, you seem to have gone to a few schools.
Yeah. I think I've been to 5.
Huh. All right, well. Good for you.
Maybe 4.
I've been to 2.
I don't know, a few. I moved around a lot as a kid.
Okay. Okay, so here's another study. At primary school, between years 3 and 5, students at independent schools make similar rates of progress as students at government schools, while students at Catholic schools make slightly less progress. Hey-o for the Catholic school. Yes, full disclosure, I went to a Catholic school. At secondary school, between years 7 and 9, independent schools or private schools do only very slightly better than government schools, less than 1 month of extra progress per year. Whoa. Just throwing some, just stoking that fire between public and private.
And
the debate. And Catholic, throw that into the mix. Yeah, it's a bit of a laggard. I was at a Catholic school, so but that shows you, right? This is from the Grattan Institute. And it shows you the findings, many different findings.
So a slightly more independent study.
Yeah, it is. And it shows you, it kind of throws caution to the wind with believing that private is better than public necessarily. What this study found was that once you adjust for socioeconomic factors, so once you adjust for kids who are poor and simply don't have access, or families that are very wealthy and do have access to extracurricular things, once you adjust for that, based purely on numeracy and literacy, it's almost identical, right? But as we know, there's more to life than numbers and letters in terms of literacy and numeracy. And so this study only tracked numeracy and literacy.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, what did you learn at school? The flute?
Oh, the French horn in year 5. So we all had to take up an instrument, and I got allocated the French horn. But
what is a French horn?
It's this sort of like a round instrument with a massive horn. Like round horn on one end.
Like the marching bands and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and it has 3 sort of finger.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So it's a brass, obviously. It's a brass instrument.
And you've got to blow into the mouthpiece, and also use the 3 finger things. And do you still play today? No. I think it seemed pretty lame for a student in year 5 to be. I had to put it on a trolley, like with a bungee cord, tying it on and take it to the bus and take it to school.
Oh my God.
Because I got the bus every day.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah, so it was kind of lame to be a school kid having to take your trolley around French horn.
I had to play the trombone at school.
Oh, it's just as bad. Maybe not a trolley.
It was gross, honestly, and I would never have picked up a trombone. But you know what I did keep up, and I really miss it, and most people would relate to this? My parents put me through playing the piano as extracurricular stuff, and that was something that I still wish today that I did more of. I love getting behind a piano.
Yeah. I mean, after that, I played the viola, and that taught me properly how to read sheet music, which I still use Not for viola. I've just recently started playing the ukulele. So
Okay. Wow. Okay. Maybe we'll just do another episode on that. But
yeah,
my point with all of this is that's the kind of thing that sometimes government schools don't have access to because they don't have the funding to support that.
yeah,
Whereas a private school does, right? So I'm going to get to some numbers in a second, but I guess that's one big selling point for private over public. Another one is prejudice.
and languages. I was going to say
Languages?
languages. But
Yep, good one. So it's just outside of the core lines of study. But I think we talked off air about prejudice. And you were saying, because you went to a different school, you went to a private school. I went to, again, a Catholic boys' school.
yeah,
So it's like semi-private, right?
I spent half my secondary school in a co-ed, and then the latter half in a all-female school. So it was quite a different mix.
So Kate told me before this, I didn't know this before this episode, she told me something interesting. You changed because you wanted to change. You found the school because it was in the top 20,
Yeah,
right, based on this list or whatever. And then you travelled an hour and a half there and an hour and a half back to school.
yeah.
Now, I'm curious to unpack why you chose it based on what was in the top 20. Like, what was going through your mind, do you remember?
Yeah, well, at the time, I wanted to go to probably a more academic focused school. I was at a very broad ranging school that catered for everyone, but it wasn't really super academic focused. Academically, I mean, who knows if it worked or not. And yeah, it was a lot of sport, and it definitely has been proven that females perform better in single sex schools.
Okay.
And I found the learning environment for me personally a lot better in a single sex school, and I wanted to go to a high performing school. So I did travel for a little while until we eventually moved closer to the school. But I mean, at year 9, I don't know what, like everything that was going through my head, but I was just like, yeah, got to do this.
This is the one for me.
I completely drove the change.
Because it's totally across the other side of the city, right? It's a hell of a thing to do.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're not alone because apparently 35% of Australian parents now send their kids to private school. That's a lot. It's a lot more than what I thought, to be honest.
Yeah, but there's so many, like there's a really wide variety of private schools, and there's heaps in regional Victoria that never sort of get picked up on, because you hear about a couple in the major cities in each state, but you don't really hear about all of the private schools in the country as well. And there's some really great ones out there.
Yeah, totally. There are too. So we talked about prejudice earlier on. I went to a Catholic school. I'm not saying I loved it. Right. I'm not saying that I am a Catholic. I'm not saying that I'm a religious person. I just went to one. All right. I didn't have a choice. So please don't judge me. But you went to private. I went to Catholic. And then I was talking to some of the crew here in the office. And we're talking about how this, I guess, stigma around hiring. So one of the benefits of going to a private school is, you know, that old cliche, it's who you know, not what you know. And you tend to hire from schools or universities that are private. But you were saying that there's a prejudice the other way. People might judge you for going to private school. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
don't know. It's sort of like different life experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely prejudice going both ways.
yeah.
Different sort of expectations from you. I don't know. You can only ever sort of see things from your own experience, and then by hearing other people, you can sort of get their side of things. But there's definitely quite different views on public and private. It's pretty contentious.
Well, it is. It's a very contentious thing. And this is the reason why we talk about this, because it's such a huge expense. It's one of the biggest things that a parent will ever pay for.
Yeah.
And there's so much misinformation. There's so much emotion that goes into it that you don't really understand the true facts of the matter. And every child is different. I think that's a really important point too. But my belief is that parents shouldn't feel like they're neglecting their child because they don't send them to a private school. I think that's just I think that's way off the mark.
Yeah.
But I got to be honest, particularly if you're in the investments industry, it is a lot about who you know.
Yeah.
You know, you get the top investment bankers in finance, or you get the top accountants, blah, 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 top lawyers, all that type of junk. They tend to be from the same schools.
I found it's almost a more male thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the female private school old collegians networks have anywhere near the same pool, and they're probably a lot newer as well.
But I think like we're quick. If let's say if you're hiring someone, you're quick to go, oh, it's because they went to a public school. That's why it didn't work out. So that therefore, I'm only going to hire from private schools. But anyway,
I don't know. Do you put your school on your resume?
Yeah, you do. So I was talking to Catherine, one of our analysts here. We're talking off air, and I said to her, you know what? Yeah, you're right. The first thing I looked at on your cover letter was actually what high school you went to.
Really?
No, I definitely didn't. No, I definitely didn't. That's the thing. Maybe some do, but I definitely
I wouldn't
don't.
even put it on my resume.
Well, some might. Yeah. I guess maybe.
I guess it's on LinkedIn. So
yeah, but I didn't even think about that. I don't really care, to be honest. Can you write? Can you analyze? That's analyst done. Okay. Yeah, that's about the extent of it.
Or do people care more about the uni? Where did you go to?
That's what we were talking about. It's probably the thing, right? The university is probably the bigger one.
I mean, especially in finance, it's like there's certain unis and certain qualifications have a lot more pull than others.
Definitely, and that's where doors open up at uni as well. Okay, I want to just throw something out there. So, and this is tying back all into this. And I'm sorry if we went off a bit of a tangent there, but we did some digging on some numbers, and just to bring it home for you. So I'm going to just give this to you, and then you can go away and think about it in your own time and whether you would do what I think you might do. Okay, so let's say hypothetically that a good primary school costs $5,000 a year to go to. This is a private school. At a high school, $30,000 a year per student per year. Simple. But let's say for both of those, in the government version, it costs $2,000 a year, which is pretty typical. And these are all based on actual numbers. You can go and find out schools. So we got at primary school for private $5,000, high school $30,000, and all of it for government $2,000.
Yep.
If you just take all the money that you save from those years of study and you invest it at 10% per year, the net result is $276,000.
So that's if you were in public school the entire time.
Yep, and instead of going to private. Now, my point is maybe you could use that money for something else to provide more opportunities to your child in a different way. Maybe you could send them to extracurricular courses, or you could invest in more early learning, or you could provide experiences that make them more worldly, or something else.
Or a family trip, a gap year,
anything.
Maybe even helping them with their first home, whatever you choose.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. And so I think, if you put it in that context, if you frame it like that, and if you're smart with your money, there might actually be no disadvantage at all from going to the government school. And then you can, on top of that, we can add in, if you go to a suburb where you are accepted into like a catchment area for a high quality government school, you actually don't lose at all. So,
except if you have to pay exorbitant rents to live in the catchment area.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, if you're living in the city in a pretty nice spot, it might be a bit tricky. But my point stands. Yeah. I think I would. As I said, I'm kidless. But if I have kids, or when I have kids, to be honest, this is how I think about it. In more, can you make the home environment more supportive for early learning?
Yeah.
And then can you make this money work better than it could by just needlessly throwing it at a private school?
And even we haven't talked about the time, having more time to spend with them. How much extra work do you have to do to earn that $30,000 a year?
Absolutely. Great point.
Can you drop to 4 days? Can you not have to work till 8 p.m. in the evening? More flexibility with your job. So potentially they might be in a public school, but you're able to spend a lot more time with them. And I mean, I don't know what the statistics say, but I think that makes a really big difference in a kid's life.
Absolutely. So that's, I guess we're just we're not meaning to bash up private schools or go, pro-public, or one for the Catholics. But we are saying that maybe you can think critically and not just feed into all the crap that gets put in the news. Actually cut through that and understand where your money's going, the ROI, if I could put it in such terms, for your child. And if this is the biggest expense, if you've got 3 kids, $30,000 a year, you do the math, that's a lot of money. So, that's a lot of resources that could go potentially somewhere else.
Yeah, I think, and also just one thing that you might see, the school costs $30,000 a year, but that doesn't include books, uniform, camps, excursions, trips, all sorts of things. So, I don't know, it can end up being a lot more than that.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this sample size of 1. We've both turned out all right. I didn't get, yeah.
But I mean, like, would we have turned out the same in completely different schools? Who knows?
Maybe not, but I would say that Australia does have a very high standard of education.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of what the stats say versus whoever. But you can go to a school and it's generally, there's good structures in place for most youth these days. Okay, so now we're going to move on to cars.
Keeping the costs of cars down in your family.
Yep. So most people, or most families have 2 cars, you would say?
Yep.
Maybe 1.5, as we're about to find out in this little bit of research that someone I know did. Obviously, we think about cars and we think of like headline figures. We know we put fuel in it. We know we do services, blah, 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 maintenance, whatever. But it's actually quite astounding how much people spend on cars and the difference some very subtle changes can make. So I wrote something, and feel free to slow me up here, Kate, but I wrote something for Rask Invest ages ago, and it gave the example of a young person that bought a car. Let's say it's a Commodore, and they paid 25 grand for it.
Yep.
Right? They got a loan through a big bank and are charging 16.8% interest. And then, when you see it in the loan repayments calculator, it says you can pay it off over 7 years. You go, yep, sure, because that's the minimum repayments if you do it over a longer term. Well, turns out that costs $17,271 in interest. But then you'll also have around about $16,500 in insurance. Then you've got roadworthy and rego, $5,400. And then you've got $7,000, let's say, in servicing. And so you add that all up, that $25,000 car costs $71,000 over 7 years.
Oh,
think about a young person,
crazy.
Apprentice, uni student, just getting started in the workforce, whatever they're doing. This person, that puts them way, way, way behind the 8 ball. Way behind. And then this is just one person with a relatively cheap car at 25 grand.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say cheap, but it's relatively cheap. And then you've got people that have multiple cars, replace it more often, and all the rest of it. Your money's just going up in smoke.
Yeah.
And if you're still in burnout, literally it's going up in smoke. But this is a really important thing. People don't realize how much they're spending on this thing.
Yeah.
The
new car does look good when they give it to you with the big red bowl on the front, and you take your photo for Instagram saying my first car. I mean, pretty special moment, but it's going to kill you financially. It is,
and I guess most people listening to this would know, we're preaching to the choir here in certain respects, but I'm just going to throw something at you. And this comes from Tony Hansen, who's a fund manager that I know from Sydney. And Tony had this crazy idea, I thought at the time, of buying cars from auction. And I'm going to read exactly what he said. And we've got a note in the show notes for this. And he says, I'll just quote Tony. This is all Tony. He says, the average new car costs $27,994. I was surprised when I looked into this as someone who purchased more than 30 cars, but about 64% of all the costs of vehicle sales are paid for by financing. Right? The average car at the end of 3 years of ownership is worth 55 to 60% of its purchase price. That's what we call depreciation, right? You would have heard that. You go from 100% down to 60%. If you buy it for 50 grand, it's now worth 30 grand, and it means you lose 20. Living expenses for the average Australian family of 4 are apparently $5,378 per month, or $64,500 a year. Now, that leaves, according to the average studies, $19,500 of disposable income. And you've probably heard that term. It's effectively what you have left over after living. If using the price figure above, we assume the average household owns 1.5 vehicles, which they replace every 3 years, the cost of depreciation to this family would amount to about $5,950 per year, or around 6 grand. In other words, it would either consume a little over 30% of your disposable income or add nearly 26% to their disposable income, depending on which side of the ledger it comes from. So, just to unpack all that, where is everyone going? What Tony is saying here is that on the average family, after they pay for all their living costs, around 30% of that goes to a car, or like the depreciation of the car.
Yeah.
Just the depreciation, the falling value of it. It's crazy, right? And then so what Tony says, this is how he aims to, he fixed it. He said, I aim to buy the vehicles, as in at auction, so well that I could replace them within 12 months by private sale at a price equal to or higher than what I paid. I would estimate this activity has added in excess of $300,000 to our family's net worth, given the money saved was invested at returns averaging about 15% or so over the past 15 years.
Pretty crazy.
Wow.
And I mean, as soon as you drive out of the car dealership, the car's gone down in value.
Yeah. But this is just averages. Maybe your family has more than 2 cars and maybe you paid more than $27,900 for them.
Yeah.
This is huge, right? People don't realize this is 30% of the disposable income for an average household.
Yeah, because I think you think of the cost of the car, but you don't even think about the fact that it's losing money every year.
As soon as you drive it out. So Tony would tell me he'd buy cars for, say, $15,000, and it would be 1 to 2 years old, like a little hatchback. He wouldn't really care what he drives as long as it's reliable, and he knew that he could sell it for a reasonable price because it didn't have too many Ks on it. And he would make a profit after owning it for a year. How many people could say they bought a car and sold it for a profit?
Not many.
Yeah. And so, this is kind of just coming back to the education piece. We just told you maybe if you cut through all the BS with, the education costs and the benefits associated with it, now you've got this way to save money from cars. All of a sudden, in 20 years, you might be $500,000 richer, depending on your family, maybe $1 million richer, just from making these decisions.
Yeah.
I'm not out here inventing the wheel again.
Yeah.
This is very simple stuff, right? Anyway, we'll move on. So the trick to Tony's strategy is go to the auctions. So just Google auctions and whatever your state's name is. Like there's some here in Victoria, I believe it's called Mannheim. And they sell ex-government cars, repossessed cars, all that type of stuff. And I think there's like Grays Online. If you've heard of that.
Well, there's heaps of firms that they have company cars. They need to replace the whole fleet every couple of years.
Fleets. Yeah, huge thing. Like we bought a car, my partner and I, Sarah and I, we bought a car. Don't mean to bring this like religious thing up again, but we bought a car that was owned by a nun. Yeah, because the church owned it. It wasn't the Catholic church.
Oh,
the church owned it and they were selling them and we heard about it and then we went and offered them the money and they took it, right? And
so you handed the money over to a nun, like a real life nun.
Yeah, not necessarily just like in the parking lot, like here you go. But it was pretty cool, right? Like you can get a car for like half the price because they don't care. They just get whatever they get. You just pay normally just a little bit more than the trade-in price. And so that's a way you could effectively drive out of the car park with a car that's worth double what you just paid for it.
Yeah. And if you don't have to worry about financing, do you think you can negotiate a better deal?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you're paying cash, yeah, absolutely.
Because they'd probably pay the financing company a commission or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely find creative ways to do this. So some other things that we'll just do here is when people say I bought a car on 0% finance, it's normally the biggest lie ever told.
Or they say 0%, you're not going to pay $1 for the next year.
Yeah, it's normally crazy talk. Normally what happens is they're quoting you the interest rate, not the comparison rate. Okay, so another thing is never buy insurance or I've got it in the notes, or other crap, end quote, from your car dealer. It's usually a rip-off.
All those add-ins that they just
you want tire insurance?
When you're buying something expensive and you're like, oh, I know $1,000 doesn't really make a difference. You know how they get you at JB Hi-Fi, you're getting a laptop and you end up getting sold X, Y, and Z extra.
As an Apple shareholder, I thank you for that.
You're just so excited. You're in the moment and you just get all the add-ons.
Yeah, totally. Okay, and this is the big one. Most people think they can't do this, and I still don't know why. Can you get by without a second car? It's like a simple question. I think saving money is just like a measure of your humility.
And there's so many options nowadays because I think it's Car Next Door. Some of my colleagues were telling me about it, but you can actually, like your neighbours can put up cars for rent. It's like Airbnb for cars.
Yeah, you
can just borrow them, and there's all those like the
you can do like
cars, like those green
the
cars.
best parking spots. There's like Go Get. I don't know the names of these companies. We don't endorse them, but you can do that, and you can just, if you need to do shopping, whatever, and use it like once off, you definitely can do it. Yeah, they're around, and they get the best car parks because the shopping centres reward.
So if you're only using the car once a week or maybe like once a month, then is there much point having a whole car that you have to pay insurance and registration on, and you don't want to be driving that car without registration?
So if you can invest money well, and you are smart or savvy enough to save it, you can start to do some things that are fantastic. Now, the last one, Kate.
Mortgages.
Is a no-brainer. The easiest one.
And you've probably
solve.
seen a lot in the media about it recently with some of the interest rate cuts. And a lot of media personalities have been telling you, call your bank, get your mortgage cut,
Yeah.
your mortgage rate. Yeah.
Yep. So we'll just jump straight into the maths. So a $500,000 mortgage at 3.5% interest with $400 per year in fees. Most mortgages seem to still have fees, which I find is crazy because you're already paying interest. So 3.5% a year interest, $400 a year in fees. That's $2,900 a month. Now, if we change it to 3% in interest, no fees, $2,370. Save $500 just for swapping interest rates.
A month.
A month.
That's pretty crazy. That's
Come on, people.
more money for you to invest.
That's it. More money to invest or more money just to plow straight back into the mortgage. Whatever you want to do. Put it in redraw facilities, offset account, whatever you want to do. Go on a holiday. Who
Pay it
cares?
off quicker.
Do something with it.
Just because it says
Don't
30
pay
years
extra.
doesn't mean you have to.
That's it. Yeah. The most powerful time to save on a mortgage is in like the first 5 years. Yeah. And so this is just a no-brainer. You've got just come on. There's people who have written scripts out there for you. Just Google.
Yeah.
Need to call my bank. Call them. Threaten to leave.
And if you
Shop
get
around.
your mortgage rate cut down by 0.5%, don't just go and put the savings is extra spending money. Just put it back into your offset or your mortgage.
Yeah. But either way, no matter what you do, it's better than paying the bank extra.
It's better than paying. Yeah, there's no reason to pay more than you have to in fees.
That's it.
With any financial product.
That's it. These mortgages have so much stickiness. Like people just think that they have to be with them, and it's just crazy.
They think the bank has all the power, but consumers are starting to have quite a lot of power.
Yeah, definitely. So if we were to add up the costs of saving on education, cars, and mortgages, these are the three big things.
Yeah.
Drink all the lattes in the world. It won't matter because you'll be saving so much on these three things.
Yeah.
And you won't be losing anything. This is the thing. You won't be losing anything.
It'd take quite a few lattes to spend $500 a month.
Oh, yeah. I reckon I could give it a crack. But
But that's the thing. If you control the costs with the really large things in your life, then your budget's a lot easier to manage.
that's it. We talk about the jar analogy, right? All the important big things going first and all the little things falling around that.
Yeah.
Most people are so focused on, I've only had one coffee today, or, I can't go to the movies, or that's an extra
I've meal
$2.
prepped all 5 meals for the week.
That's it. Oh, you said mental accounting the other day, right?
Yeah.
You talked about how there's a bias that we have where money from different sources, we value it differently. Well, saving money is better. Saving 10% is better than making 10% on investment. Why? Because you don't pay tax when you save money.
Yeah.
So just think about that.
And you're buying your time back. You're investing in your future.
That's it. So if you've got these three big things on your list, really think critically about them. Think, how can I get this cost down? And where can I redirect that money to make more money?
Yeah. Or if one of them is really important to you, that spending more money on education is really important, then what other can you bring your mortgage down or get rid of a car?
Yep.
And so allocating that money to the important things in your life rather than just spending without any conscious thought.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Good point. I sound pretty anti-private school, but absolutely.
Yeah,
That's what you
if
value
it's important
doing.
to you,
Absolutely.
then you just have to make it a priority and reduce costs in other areas. Otherwise, you'll be living paycheck to paycheck and not in a happy frame of mind.
Yep. Well said. Okay, so we've just nailed those three things. If you have an experience, I would love to hear about it.
Yeah.
You can tweet to us. You can put it. What's the thing on Instagram? That you tweet to people on Twitter. What do you do on Instagram?
You slide into their DMs.
You DM them. So direct message.
Direct message.
I don't know if that's I'm just saying people spread the love. If you take a look at these things on the back of this episode, let us know. Let us know how you save money. Let us know what you think about education expenses, where you find value, where you think we're way off the mark.
If you've got some great methods for cutting costs in large areas in your life, send us a message and we'd love to share them with the listeners.
Absolutely would. Kate, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Owen.